So if you're the Saints, what would you do when at number 9 in the NFL draft, you see wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona State available or tight end Tyler Warren from Penn State available? Both of those guys, I think, fit a need that really needs to be addressed by the Saints in this draft at some point, which is a big-bodied, physical, contested catch, red zone target type receiver. And I don't really care if it's a wide receiver or a tight end. Both of those guys fit the bill. And in an interesting twist, what if they're both available at 9? Which one would you take over the other? I'll let you know what I think. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. Now, this is a trend that I'm noticing in recent mock drafts, whether it's someone else's mock draft or when I do simulate a mock draft on like PFF or one of the other websites, which I actually kind of end up doing, seems like 10 or 20 times a day. So I don't have this plugged into a spreadsheet, can't give you empirical data or percentages or anything, but it's just an observation that the top 8 or so picks has kind of evolved over the last couple of weeks where, it looked like McMillan and or Warren would be gone before we had a chance to pick them at 9 to they're, I wouldn't say regularly, but it feels like a 1 in 4, 1 in 3 chance one of them will be there at 9. And occasionally, boom, I'm looking at both names going, well, which one do I want to take? I think at this point, we feel pretty good. Ward, Hunter, Carter, Graham, Genty, those 5, I think pretty sure will not be available at 9. If they are, that would be the 5 I would probably be more inclined to take at 9. Outside of that, sometimes you get into this weirdness where, of course, there's Sanders may or may not be floating around in there also, so that would get you around 6. But you start seeing I call him the edge rusher of the week, sort of. Early on, it was Pierce or possibly Mike Green. Lately, Jalen Walker, I've been seeing his name scratching up in there. Names like Jihad Campbell, who is a very intriguing name, popping in. Some mocks and some analysts are even putting like Matthew Golden or Luther Burton as the number 1 receiver and pushing McMillan back. I can't see those two. I like them both, and I think they're good receivers. But as I'm going to explain, I think clearly Warren's the top tight end and McMillan is the top receiver. And it would put the Saints in an interesting dilemma, albeit not a bad one. I think it'd be a great dilemma to be in, but a dilemma nonetheless. Which one would you really want to grab there? And just the big-bodied receiver type, they both fit the bill. Warren, look, 6'6", 257, played at Penn State, 5-year guy in college from 2020 to 2024. He turns 22 May 24th, almost 2 months from now. So he's a young guy. McMillan, 6'4", 219. He's going to turn 22 this Saturday. Happy birthday, McMillan. 3 years of college, 2022 to 2024. Both kind of evolved into more or less focal points of their offenses in McMillan's case, the last 2 years. Warren's case, really last year. But both of them had good careers prior to they started breaking out in college. They share a lot of the same strengths when they start talking about strengths and weaknesses for prospects. The phrase NFL ready comes up constantly on both of them. Almost religiously, high contested catch rates. They can get balls away from defenders. They can keep defenders away from the ball in order to be able to catch it. Warren's got a really low drop rate. McMillan's isn't that bad. Size for both of them, I think, is kind of a difference maker against defenders. They mention this a lot. It's just their size and athletic ability, because they both have a lot of athletic ability, can just mismatch against defenders. Those offensive type catchers where A guy's too small, he can't deal with them, and if a guy's too slow, they'll get around him without much problem. Um, they're known to be good route runners. Both of them good yards after the catch players, and it's a bigger thing also that I think the Saints need from receivers and tight ends is, you're talking about guys averaging 5-6 yards yak in college. You bring that to the NFL. I don't know if the Saints really had anybody from the wide receiver tight end position that was over 2 or 3, it seemed like. It's probably rare. Like I said, they're fast and agile for their size. They both have big catch radiuses, which goes along with the size. And they both get kind of a kudo for being strong and willing blockers, which is also kind of a negative for both of them that I've seen. And it's more like a blocking efficiency. It's not that they're not willing or they can't lock up initially. They seem to both have trouble holding blocks for various reasons. Some of the stuff thrown out there, like McMillan, is tall and kind of slight build, kind of a lanky guy. And when he's trying to block, sometimes somebody can get up under him and able to push him off balance. Warren, the biggest knock that I saw, because they would throw this as a weakness, but rarely would somebody come up with an explanation why. But Warren, the one that I saw a couple of times, he just kind of has a tendency to release the block early. If that's the two worst things you're going to say about him, I think they're both easily fixed. Get McMillan a little bigger and stronger, especially in the legs, and teach Warren count to 2 before you release the block instead of 1. So the fact that they do have strength and are physical and want to block goes a long, long way right there in the NFL to being able to do it. When I look at them individually, because collectively, like I said, I think you get a lot of the same thing in both of them that the Saints desperately need. When you look at Tyler Warren, he is the guy in this draft that they all view as the complete tight end. And I think that's why the NFL ready tag comes to with his name an awful lot, because he is a pass catcher and a blocker. Granted, we just mentioned he's probably gonna have to get a little better at blocking, but you have a good starting point at the very least. He's extremely versatile because he can line up as a tight end. He can line up in wide as X or Z. Yeah, he can line up in the slot as a Y. Penn State used him as a fullback. They used him as a quarterback. He would take direct snaps at quarterback. Threw the ball a couple of times, lined up out of that quarterback position. I know the name everybody wants to bring up. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's an interesting how versatile you can use him, and very interesting. Nobody's talking about this. Saints right now don't have a fullback on their roster. Now, I'm sure people have noticed, but they're probably, like me, kind of assuming, well, eventually they'll get around to bringing one in. But out of curiosity, I went back to look at the Eagles last year, and as far as I could tell, they did not have a fullback rostered at all in 2024. I'm going to assume they used, and this is probably one of the reasons why they were so bent on getting Jack Stoll in here, who was the Eagles' blocking tight end. Good possibility, like the Eagles, you may see a lot more of two tight end looks, or just using a tight end as an extra wide, because they did do that a lot. Keeps you flexible in your formation, right? That's one of the things the NFL does want to do, is just not be locked into always 11 or always 12 personnel or whatever. When you have a player that can play multiple positions, it helps that out tremendously. And when you look at the Saints right now, you're saying, well, we already have 3 tight ends on the roster likely to make the team. But when you kind of look at them, Juwan Johnson's supposed to be the big pass catcher. And the phrase I keep hearing is the Saints paid him because they're waiting for it to all to click, which is a scary comment because he's been in the league a while. If it hasn't clicked now, what makes you believe it's suddenly going to click in where he is going to be the tight end that can play 80% of the snaps and be the pass catcher that you want, that other tight ends, top name tight ends around the league are? think he's part of a piece of the puzzle, and they puzzled tight end together the last 2 years with a couple of good NFL pro tight ends, but not on the level of tight end that Tyler Warren could be. I don't think that's ever in Juwan Johnson's future. Neither Foster Moreau, neither Jack Stoll, but they all bring three good components to it because Juwan Johnson can be a bigger pass catcher for you. Jack Stoll is a blocker, and when we signed him, they showed a few clips where he is athletic enough to get off a block, catch a ball, and make something happen downfield. But he also likes to run people over and slam them to the ground when he's blocking. Good guy to have. Foster Moreau is kind of a combo tight end almost between the two. Does a little smidgen of all this. I don't think any of it's, no offense to Foster, he's a 5-star at any of them, but he's a solid 3 all the way across the board. So when you ask him to do stuff like that, he's competent and able, for the most part, to get what you need. But Tyler Warren could be the guy that can do all that for you with one guy. I don't know if any of the other tight ends behind him, it's a tremendously deep class, a lot of good prospects. But it seems like Loveland is generally considered from Michigan the second best tight end, more the pass catcher vein, not quite the complete tight end. And as you go down the list, they all kind of either specialize in something. Arroyo from Miami is probably a serious downfield threat. Taylor for LSU is just a raw, everybody says is a raw project with a lot of size and athletic ability, a lot like Warren, but just nowhere near along his game that Warren is. So you can wait and you can find some version of what you need, or you can get it all in one guy at 9. Now, this is where we got to talk about the name we tabled from a little earlier, the name of Taysom Hill, because that name keeps coming. He could be your next Taysom Hill. He could be your next Taysom Hill. I agree, but let me put that in context. Because it is the versatility when you look at a guy that can play X, Y, and Z, can play inline, can play in the slot, can line up in the backfield, can be a fullback, can take snaps at quarterback, all the things Taysom did. Not saying he'll be as productive in the exact same way as Taysom, or we should dust off the exact Taysom package the way they use Taysom if you draft this guy to use him. But I think what you're doing is what Taysom did, especially last year when they used him in a much more expanded role on the field in multiple positions during the course of a game. You put the defense in a bind from the huddle. Because when a guy like that is on the field and you're not sure, because technically when he's on the field, you don't know, is it 11 personnel? Is it 12 personnel? If Alvin Kamara's in the backfield with him, is it 0 personnel? Because they could both line up as wide receiver, which often forces the defense just to sit in a base package and not get too exotic, at least initially. Now, once the formation comes out, they may make adjustments, but still, you're forcing them before you even snap the ball to question what you're going to do. Well, we have to call something basic and then get them to switch into something that they may not want to switch into. They may not have the personnel on the field to do. Gives you an advantage you can exploit. We saw the Saints able to do that at times last year tremendously when Taysom was healthy on the field. Sometimes without even Taysom having to touch the ball, he could do that. Warren is a guy that and of the two, that is the reason why I like him the most, because he can give you some very similar stuff that McMillan can give you that you need. But I don't think McMillan's going to be lining up in multiple positions and be able to create the doubt or the ability to tilt the field like a Warren could, doing what he's capable of doing. All that being said, lots of love for T-Mac, as I saw somewhere like they call him in Arizona. Look, watching just a little bit of his tape and then seeing some of like his route trees and stuff that he ran in college, just for Saints fan reference, like a type of version of Michael Thomas. They seem to use him well, and he operated real well in place in the slot, the X and the Z, and they seem to think projecting in the pros he'll probably be better an outside receiver, but he is capable of getting in the slot. slants, hitches, outs, intermediate, crossing the field, all that stuff sound familiar. The bigger guy, again, catch radius, physical, can keep guys away from him to catch the ball. And if they happen to hang in there, has the ability to grab the thing and keep them from knocking it out of his hands. So you get that flexibility and versatility and alignment. And then his physical traits, he's got good speed. He's got good leaping ability. He's got strong hands. So right off the bat, a lot of people I'm reading is saying that for most NFL teams, you draft him, he's going to be your number three receiver from the second you turn the card into Roger Goodell. And a lot of them are projecting there is some rawness to his game that'll have to be kind of smoothed out and refined in the NFL. But you can say that about a lot of rookie receivers. But he can give you enough while you're getting him to do that. He can give you plenty enough to help you win football games. They mentioned a receiver, a quarterback can lean on, and I'm like, yeah, again, sounds familiar. We've had a couple of those. Even before Michael Thomas, there was a guy named Jimmy Graham doing it from the tight end position. But the red zone target's the big thing for me. We just really haven't had one of those that we could rely on the last couple of years. We were better in the red zone last year, a lot better. But one of these two guys can slant it heavily in your favor, especially if you're able to run the ball. Because now the defense is like, play the run, we play the pass. We play the pass, we may have to put extra attention on a Warren or a McMillan in the red zone. And we used to be able to force teams to do that, and we scored touchdowns religiously instead of kicking field goals. So I think all this is something that the Saints need to emphasize. And even on McMillan, like I said, I'm higher on Warren, but I'm looking at McMillan, just the simple fact you can put him in the slot as well as outside. What he brings to the table, when you add Olave and Shaheed blowing tops off and getting downfield is what he's great at. Olave in the intermediate to deep area, deep crosses, deep outs, that's what he's excelled at since he showed up here. You have a complete receiving core. And if you want to if Kellen Moore really wants to get like Sean McVay tricky and get into multiple receiver sets on one side of the field, like he loves to do with receivers, you can interchange them, not only in the out of the slot or the wing or the outside guy, but the route you run. Hell, they'll audible in the routes they run while they're standing out there before the ball snaps. And I think he completes your receiving core where you're able to do that. Big physical yak guy to go with your Olave, you're really good. You know, that 15 to 25-yard range, he's excellent. And then we all know what he could do once he gets over the top. So if you were to be in that position of both of them being available and you say, well, no, I've got to take McMillan, I wouldn't like try to tackle you and rip the card out of your hand before you handed it to the NFL. So, I mean, you see a lot of value in both those guys. And the guys that I like more, like I said, players, let me rephrase that, the prospect players that I like more, potentially none of them I don't think can make it to 9. I think it would be a miracle, and it would be great to be looking at one or two of these, you know, McMillan or Warren, and say a Mason Graham sitting there and having another discussion like this. Because ultimately, if these discussions come about with multiple players, the one thing we know that should happen, unless the whole entire NFL process misses on these guys that we're talking about, you're going to get an elite player, potential all-pro type guy you can jam on your team. And whether it's Graham or Carter or Hunter on defense, or Genty or Warren or McMillan on offense, or God forbid Ward some kind of way shows up here, whatever we do, that number 9 is you're taking a guy of that level, you're putting him on your team, and you say, that's a guy we can build around. Let's continue to build and build around making that guy the playmaker, whether it's offense or defense. So let me ask you, drop them in the comments, McMillan or Warren, if they're both there. Easy question because I don't think you can go wrong with either one of the two answers there. My preference is Warren, but like I said, yeah, you wouldn't wouldn't tackle anybody and rip the card out of their hand if they wanted to walk up there and draft McMillan over Warren. I not a problem with that necessarily. I do think based on just nothing but 54 years of NFL observation, it seems to me whenever kind of that hot shot, not necessarily young, but just that hot shot like coordinator goes somewhere to become a head coach, it always seems like the first draft pick that they make in the first round is a like that player for their side of the ball. I could be wrong, but I just feel like you'll see that. So I've been emphasizing the offensive side of this at number 9 because just my hunch, gut feeling, they're looking hard, wanting to bring in that offense, bam, elite piece, but they could have a shot at finding one on defense. Um, I think the top guys, Carter, Hunter, Graham, I don't think they're going to be there at 9. Graham may have the best shot of them, but I think offensively, you're looking um, at being able to land one of those top guys, depending on how it shakes out. Just my guess. I think that's the way they're going to go. But to be perfectly clear, Ward shows up at 9. Graham, Carter, definitely. Travis Hunter, definitely. They hit the board at 9. I'd be like, yeah, we're good on that, either taking a quarterback or taking one of those defenders. So, going to be dropping this on Friday, which means Tet McMillan's birthday will be tomorrow. Happy birthday, Tet. We'll try to remember hit Ty Warren in May when his happens, just to be fair. Unless he's not a saint, then we'll probably forget. So Monday, we'll probably talk a little more about the defensive side, the possibility of taking one of the. I kind of look at the 3 top guys. Again, Carter, Hunter, Graham. Topic of conversation, and also kind of start taking a look at 40, depending on. I mean, obviously, what we do at 9 is going to greatly affect 40, but the day 2 picks are good for the Saints, good areas for the Saints, and I think, even an outline fact, they could trade back up in the first round. They might have the capital to do it late if they decide they want to do it for somebody. And that's all interesting conversations to start having at that point. At this point, so till I see you Monday, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.